Good afternoon. Following its decision to invoke Article 5 of the Washington Treaty in the wake of the 11th September attacks against the United States of America, the NATO allies have agreed today, at the request of the United States, to take 8 measures individually and collectively to expand the options available in the campaign against terrorism. Specifically, they agreed to, number 1, enhance intelligence sharing and cooperation, both bilaterally and in the appropriate NATO bodies, relating to the threats posed by terrorism and the actions to be taken against it. Number 2, provide individually or collectively, as appropriate and in accordance with their capabilities, assistance to allies and other states which are or may be subject to increased terrorist threats as a result of their support for the campaign against terrorism. Number 3, take necessary measures to provide increased security for facilities of the United States and other allies on their territory. Number 4, to backfill selected allied assets in NATO's area of responsibility that are required to directly support operations against terrorism. Number 5, provide blanket overflight clearances for the United States and other allies' aircraft in accordance with the necessary air traffic arrangements and national procedures for military flights related to operations against terrorism. Number 6, provide access for the United States and other allies to ports and airfields on the territory of NATO nations for operations against terrorism, including for refueling in accordance with national procedures. The North Atlantic Council also agreed, number 7, that the alliance is ready to deploy elements of its standing naval forces to the Eastern Mediterranean in order to provide a NATO presence and to demonstrate resolve. And number 8, that the alliance is similarly ready to deploy elements of its NATO airborne early warning force to support operations against terrorism. Today's collective actions operationalize Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, and these measures were requested by the United States following the determination that the 11th of September attack was directed from abroad. Today's decisions clearly demonstrate the Allies' resolve and commitment to support and contribute to the US-led fight against terrorism. Thank you very much.
Question, please. Could you please identify yourself before asking first?
Monsieur le secrétaire général, vous ne pensez pas que les États-Unis, avec ces 8 demandes, mettent les alliés dans l'ambiguïté? Ce sont des 8 demandes générales. Il n'y a pas quelque chose de spécifique. Où sont les cibles? Où sont les demandes militaires? Combien d'avions? Combien de bateaux? Tout ça. Il y a quelque chose qui cloche là-dedans. Merci.
Well, the requests that have been made are deliberately framed in a broad sense because the United States of America has not yet decided how it will respond militarily and in other ways to the attacks that took place some 3.5 weeks ago. But they are deliberately designed to make sure that the right facilities and the right capabilities can be deployed in the right way at the right time. That is why the request was made, and that is why the requests have been agreed. It is, of course, open to the United States to act on its own under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, or to do so in association with any other group of states or coalition of states. It can also operate through NATO and the NATO allies as part of the alliance, and as a consequence of its decision to invoke Article 5, have made these declarations today in order to give assistance to the United States to increase the number of options that it has available and to increase the odds of success.
Secretary General Judy Dempsey, Financial Times. The Bush administration has often said that this campaign is global and it may not stop, indeed, against bin Laden. What I want to ask you is that these measures adopted by NAC, their application, will they be only relevant to the situations in this campaign against bin Laden, or will they extend further?
Well, the North Atlantic Council has quite deliberately framed these decisions in the broadest possible way. And many of them would obviously require the United States to make the requests that are there. But they're not. They're clearly not time limited. It is, and there has been an attack on one of the allies, and Article 5 clearly determines that shall be assumed to be an attack on all of them.
Because you're not quite clear in your answer.
Surely, this is
you're so
terrible criticism.
It's shocking, mea culpa. But now, let me get this straight. This Article 5, is it open-ended, or will it only be applied to this particular campaign?
Well, it relates to the attack on the 11th of September, an attack on the United States of America, which the Allies have deemed to have been an attack that involves Article 5. Therefore, that attack is deemed to be an attack on all of the countries, but it specifically relates to that particular attack. What flows from that clearly is something that is broader than just an attack on the individual perpetrators, because they are clearly part of a network. But the Allies know what they're doing, and they've responded in the right way to the requests made by the United States.
Mia Doornaert, De Standaard, Brussels. I'm here. Mr. General Secretary, could you enlarge on the help which is being asked individually or collectively to the countries which may come under increased threat of terrorism because of their cooperation? Is that worldwide?
I can't specify because clearly we can't predict, and I'm not in the business of speculating. But it is a statement of solidarity and a recognition that there may well be problems for those who have the courage and the commitment to take a stand against this form of international terrorism.
Veit Braun, Deutsche Welle Television. If I got it right, the last point on the list were AVAX planes, AVAX facilities. Would they operate only over NATO territory or also out of area in the Gulf, for example?
Well, it'll depend on the circumstances.
Lord Robertson, you mentioned the fourth request of the United States. I'm interested what word assets means in the fourth request. On which way would NATO help military action?
What assets are you talking about? Which particular?
When you read the fourth request of the United States,
the backfill selected allied assets.
Right. Can we know more about this fourth?
Well, I think it speaks for itself that there are certain locations where American troops or equipment may well be based, which might be required in the fight against terrorism. And the Allies are saying that depending on the circumstances, depending on their own abilities, then they will help to backfill where these assets may well be required. But the assets may be in terms of troops. One example might be the commitment in the Balkans, the number of troops who are tied up there. Then Allies may be willing to backfill there if some of those troops and some of the capabilities there were required elsewhere. But that in no way, we have been assured, will undermine the United States' commitments to any of the operations where they are engaged with other NATO allies.
Eliseo Oliveira from the Spanish paper El Periódico. Mr. Robertson, may you explain a little bit more what does mean the deployment of the naval forces and the airborne AWACS?
Well, I don't want to be too specific for reasons which I think will be pretty obvious to everybody in this room. But there are standing naval forces under NATO's command, and some of them may well be deployed. But I'm not beyond what I said in terms of providing a NATO presence in the area and to demonstrate resolve. I'm not willing to go beyond that.
Two last questions, please. Gentlemen, first row.
Michal Mocek, Czech newspaper Dnes. Secretary General, all these measures are applicable only against Al-Qaeda or against all terrorist groups that have some connection to the attack on 11th September 1st? And second, how now the military structures of NATO will be involved?
Well, the United States has made it clear that the evidence that it has been collecting points towards Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, but not them exclusively as being responsible for the attacks that took place on the 11th of September. So it has been made clear that this is a campaign against international terrorism, and all of those who may well have been related to those who committed the atrocities on the 11th of September. They alone were not culpable, and therefore it is necessary for the international community to unite against the networks who lie behind those who were involved in the suicide bombing.
Last questions, please.
António Martínez, RTP Portugal. Secretary General, these 8 points that you just announced us, do they correspond to the American demands made yesterday in the North Atlantic Council? And can NATO do more? In other words, are you not a little bit frustrated that such an organization could eventually be required to do a little bit more due to the potential of the 90 nations?
But these are not American demands, they were American requests. And these decisions reflect a willingness by the Allies to help the United States, which has been attacked, and which led to the decision to invoke Article 5. It is a matter for the Allies to decide in any situation where there has been an attack, whether or not to invoke Article 5. But in the light of what happened on the 11th of September, that decision was taken unanimously and very rapidly indeed. There was then a period of time for the United States to determine whether the attack came from abroad and therefore whether Article 5 was fully invoked. That happened this week. It is then up to the attacked nation to request what help and assistance it requires. NATO is not in the lead here. The United States of America is in the lead. And the United States of America, because of the geographic location of where they think the main terrorist networks are, will establish a number of different coalitions. NATO will play its part in that campaign and in this way, but we're not the only factor that is engaged at this time.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you.